Good evening, everybody. I'm Ben Finley, and I'm here on behalf of PFAS Georgia, and I want to welcome everybody and thank you all for coming. It's remarkable the turnout that we have tonight. We're told over 625 people are here tonight is the last number that was disclosed to us, but I just really, it's exciting to me to have this kind of turnout for something that's so important to all of us. We were in Dalton, Georgia last night, had a similar turnout. We started the PFAS campaign in a very modest way, trying to get the word out. But I really just want to thank you all for being here. We've got a number of things that we're going to cover tonight. And as you all know, Erin Brockovich is here. She is the #1 consumer advocate in the country. And she's going to talk about the things that she's done and kind of how she got started in this, but the PFAS issue and how important it is to all of us as Georgians. I will tell you, as we have continued to move through this, one of the things that we've been very excited about is the fact that everybody has worked together. And it's something that's important for all of us to continue to work together. This is not an issue, this is not a political issue, it's not a political race, it is an issue of the human race. It's an issue that we all can benefit from if we work together. I've got a strong faith, and I am guided by that. I know as many of you are, but I find it remarkable as we're working on the PFAS project, and you'll see sort of these, your neighbors who've written into us and provided us various statements about their experience with PFAS and the issues and the problems with it. I've been practicing law for 34 years in the state of Georgia, and have worked with some great Rome lawyers like Bob Fennell, Andy Davis, and you've got a very strong bar in Floyd County who've done some remarkable things, and particularly what Andy was able to do on behalf of Rome, which is different. Rome has had success in the PFAS project, unlike others. But to me, this goes back to something more fundamental than that, and that is this. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It's the first sentence in the Bible. Genesis 1, Chapter 1, verse 1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I believe that without any doubt in my mind. I also know that when this area of the country 300 years ago was owned by Native Americans, Indians who owned this property, words like Catoosa and Etowah and Conesaga and all of the other things that go with that were Indian and derivations of Indian names, like where I come from, Muskogee County. The water was clean, the land was clean. When we inherited this years ago, before corporate interests came in and contaminated Northwest Georgia as well as other parts of the state of Georgia and the country, it was pristine. The water was clean, the air was clean. When industry came in and began to contaminate, that's when problems began. Like I said, I've been practicing law for 34 years. I've done defense work, I've done plaintiff's work, I do civil litigation. But what got me interested in this, we worked on a little bit with the BP oil spill, but what got me very interested in this was my daughter. My daughter's 24 years old, she's in law school. And she said, Daddy, you know, I don't know that your generation understands this, what the environmental issues are, but we don't want to inherit those sorts of problems. And I thought about it a lot. And I was reminded that Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. What does that mean? Your children's children, that'd be your grandchildren, right? And I'm not talking about material in the sense of money and financial. I'm talking about the environment. I'm talking about a gift that God gave all of us to protect. And I am so moved by the folks that we've worked with and the people that are working together in a collaborative way. I'll tell you, last night in Dalton, Georgia, we had Clay Fuller and Sean Harris, who are your two candidates to be your next congressman for the 14th district, succeeding Marjorie Taylor Greene in that district. And they were there both last night, together. You find me, a Republican and a Democrat, that can get together in this day and age with a division in this country and show me an issue that they're in unison on and they're proud to support together. We saw it last night. We saw it last night, and it was a remarkable thing to watch. The healing between them, the issues that we realize that are more important than whether you're black, white, male, female, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. What matters is the environment. What matters is our future. What matters is clean air and clean water. You're going to hear from me, and we're going to talk about the cases and sort of where things are. We're going to talk about the contamination. We're going to have Erin Brockovich, but we're also going to have Bob Bowcock speak. Bob is the #1 water expert in the country. He's our expert. He's testified before Congress. He's been involved in things working with the Trump administration. He's working with Bobby Kennedy right now. He worked with the Biden administration. This is not a partisan issue. It's a nonpartisan issue. It's an issue that's important to all of us. And as a result, one of the things I want to recognize before we kind of get things going is a few elected officials who are here tonight, just so you know, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, it doesn't matter, but they're here showing support. Quentin Postel for State House District 4. Doug Walker is here as well for Public Information. Sean Harris is here for the 14th Congressional District. Rasmus Jensen is here with the State House. Elena Beeman is here running for Commissioner. And Clay Fuller, was going to be here but had another thing that he had to get to, but he is here in support of us. And I want Clay and Sean both to be recognized like they were last night about their commitment to this and what they're going to try to do to help everybody in this room. Now, everybody in this room has something that you can do and you can change and you can help as we move forward. Erin Brockovich is the poster child for that. Erin Brockovich was a single mom, and many of you seen her movie that Julia Roberts played, and you can see how she took by herself and was a catalyst for change. She's really why you all are here. I was teasing with some folks earlier that if it was a town hall meeting without Erin, and if it were me, 10 people might show up and I'd be related to about half of them. That'd be about it. That's about how it would go down. But with Erin Brockovich here, it's different. She's different. She's a difference maker. But she's somebody that just decided she was going to be a catalyst for change, and she is. Now, the polluters and efforts to take away your legal rights are something that I'd like everybody to know about. I find with people, with my clients, and I mediate a lot of cases now as a mediator. I've gotten kind of older, but I find when people are well-informed in life, they usually make good decisions. If you try to keep people from information and they're ignorant, not that they're not smart, but they're just ignorant, don't know anything in terms of information, they get taken advantage of. And I want you to know things that are going on outside of the cases and things that aren't on the 6 o'clock news and maybe you've never heard of. But there are those that are trying to advance bills, large corporate interests, that are trying to keep everybody in this room from having a claim, from bringing a claim, okay? There's only 3 branches of government. The judicial branch, Thomas Jefferson says, the only branch of government that anchors the entire society, where the little man can go up against corporate America, right? Well, you can go in with a jury of your peers and let them decide whether or not you have a case. It's not for the legislature. It's not for powerful political interests who have contaminated or caused harm to be able to get a walk-off home run and be completely immune, but that's what they're trying to do. So I want to share a couple of these things with you all so that you see what's going on. Now, at the legislature, there were 3 bills that were trying to be passed by these large corporate interests. House Bill 211, House Bill 1212, Senate Bill 577. Now, House Bill 211 was from last year, but they tried to work it again this year. House Bill 211 says that if you bring a claim against certain industry, including the carpet industry, you will not be able to prosecute that claim because they would get immunity from a potential PFAS claim. Immunity, okay? So you contribute to the problems, you cause the problems, but this bill would allow there to be immunity. House Bill 1212, to create a disincentive to bring a claim, says that if you bring a claim, you'll be taxed 50% of your recovery. Now check that out. 50% of your recovery goes back to the state, and the ones that's been contaminated. I mean, that's outrageous. Senate Bill 577 provides that local claims, municipalities, and we represent individuals, business owners, corporations, and that have got issues related really more to the public sector with municipalities like cities and counties. Cities and counties are obviously made up of taxpayers, and we represent folks in that space because you have obviously drinking water, you've got wastewater, you've got landfills, that any of those claims could potentially be wiped out with the stroke of a pen depending on how the politics go and depending how things are done in the legislature. But that Senate Bill 577 would again allow immunity, or would at least eliminate certain claims that could be brought. Now, the carpet companies brought the first effort, and we all together defeated it. Same with in 2026 and 2027. We need to defeat it next year. The takeaway I want you all to have from tonight is learn as much as you can about PFAS, but I want to encourage every one of you to contact your state senator, state rep, I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat, and say, listen, we do not need to have an immunity bill. We do not have a PFAS bill that will restrict my rights under the 7th Amendment to the Constitution. My right to trial by jury. I'm against that. And I am asking you, do not vote for that. And it's interesting to me that no matter how powerful the interests are politically and the money's behind big corporate interests, if everybody in this room does what I just suggested, they will be defeated. I don't care how big they are. I don't care how strong they are. I mean, literally everybody in here is David, and that's Goliath, but y'all know how that story ended, right? Because if you're determined and you're on the right side of things, good things will happen. But you got to do something now. You can't just sit around on your hands and expect it to happen from you. And you'll hear Erin Brockovich talk about her book, which is entitled Superman's Not Coming. And you'll hear her talk about that. Superman's not coming. You know? I mean, you got to get moving. You got to do it. Everybody's got to talk a good game in America. Everybody talking a good game about this or that. But you just got to do it, right? I'm going to be the top in the company. We just do it. You know, I'm going to be the most successful. We just do it. You know, I'm going to make a good grade. We just do it. Quit talking about it, right? Just do it. Just do it, all right? And if you see that kind of strength with all of us individually, you'd be amazed at the political power that you have, because this country is founded by the people. Now, our clients, I will tell you this, in an Erin Brockovich way, literally went to the legislature, the Capitol, and testified against House Bill 211 and the other bills. And I want to recognize Leroy and Amber Fletcher, Martha Bradford, and Ronnie Anderson. Y'all made up, probably 99% of people here don't even know who they are. But they worked or lived near, in Northwest Georgia, plants and dealt with contamination and had PFAS contamination that you wouldn't believe. It's shocking. And they went to the legislature on their own and testified against these bills. And it was one of those powerful things that I've ever seen. The Fletchers have 6 children that were exposed to PFAS daily. Ronnie worked at one of the plants and can tell you stories that, I mean, you'd be shocked at. Martha Bradford's story is one of the most compelling things I've ever heard. And it's far more powerful than for me to speak than for these individuals to speak. We're advocates, we're lawyers, we do our jobs, but the truth of the matter is it's not about us, it's about everybody in this room, and it's about folks like I just mentioned. It's about folks like Ronnie. It's about folks like Martha. It's like folks like Leroy and Amber. Now, we also testified against the bill. And I'm going to play you just for a couple minutes my testimony. I'm going to play you Nick's testimony so y'all can hear, because y'all aren't down there at the Capitol, don't know what's going on. But you kind of got to get an idea and a flavor for what we're talking about, okay? And this is sort of one of those, if you'll just indulge me.
Members of this committee, I'm Ben Finley. I'm going to speak very quickly because I've got 3 minutes, just very quickly. I am an attorney in Georgia. I've been practicing law for 33 years. I'm a special assistant attorney general for the state of Georgia. I represent the state of Georgia, and I represent a lot of folks in Northwest Georgia. House Bill 211 is a terrible bill. It is to protect wrongdoers. The bill seeks to immunize carpet manufacturers for negligence, gross negligence, and wanton carelessness. Shaw and Mohawk, among others, have put corporate greed and profit over human lives and safety, and I can prove it today. I've heard, among others, the sponsor of the bill say, and I quote, "Sue them all if there is knowledge." Excellent questions were raised about whether or not Shaw and Mohawk had knowledge about these issues. Shaw and Mohawk's corporate representatives have testified under oath that they had knowledge of PFAS contamination for the past couple decades, and both companies were instructed by 3M to incinerate PFAS, but chose not to do so. They could have captured and killed PFAS on the factory floor, but they did not. They chose to discharge it, and it is because of Shaw and Mohawk that it hit the ground in Georgia. 3M made it, they gave it to Shaw and Mohawk, and the monies that Mohawk has made with their $7.6 billion market cap came from PFAS and stepping on the necks and the backs of people in Northwest Georgia that they made a profit off of and contaminated our environment. It's called a predominance of cancers in people. It's resulted in properties being devalued, and it is absolutely tragic what has happened. Shaw and Mohawk and 3M representatives have testified under oath, including Jim Williams at Mohawk, Rick Ressler, Robert Chadd at 3M, Kelly Ballou at Shaw, Donald Davis, Jeffrey Liverbaum, Mohawk, and Cynthia Williams at Shaw, that they knew about it, had knowledge of it, and were aware of the problems with PFAS. It is absolutely tragic that this claim is going on. Let me tell you what this is about. This is about the fact that Troutman Pepper filed a lawsuit on behalf of Dalton Utilities and the taxpayers in Dalton to get remediation from Shaw and Mohawk, who have been corrupting and contaminating Dalton, Georgia, and they know they got to clean it up. It's analogous to if I came to somebody's yard and I dumped a bunch of trash in your yard, I can't say, hey man, it's your problem. You got to clean it up. And here's the bottom line. If 3M and Daikin and DuPont don't clean it up with Shaw and Mohawk, it falls on the taxpayers of Georgia. I've been coming up here since I was 18 years old with Pete Robinson from Columbus, Georgia in 1984. I'm 58 years old. I've never seen anything like this where any corporate defendant, and I was taught better, tries to seek immunity and a walk-off home run when they are culpable, have knowledge, and are liable for these claims. It is absolutely tragic. And I would suggest that a law firm like Troutman Pepper with Chief Justice Harold Melton as one of the partners in that firm would never file a lawsuit against Shaw and Mohawk unless they do dadgum well on behalf of the city of Dalton that they had the goods on them. I'm from Columbus, Georgia. It'd be like the dang city of Columbus suing Aflac. And I can assure you the city of Columbus would never sue Aflac unless they had the information, the knowledge, and all the evidence to back up their case. So to quote the sponsor of the bill, sue them all. And that's what we're doing. We sued them all in Gwinnett County State Court. We brought a case with Gerald Davidson in Gwinnett County, a great lawyer in Gwinnett. We've got Georgia plaintiffs against Georgia resident defendants, including Murray County's landfill, Catoosa's landfill, and Gordon County's landfill, because it's going to fall on the taxpayers. And here's the tragedy. The double tragedy is that the victims are going to have to clean it up. Get a load of that. They dump the stuff on your property, and then you get to clean it up. All right, so we brought against Georgia resident defendants in Georgia State Court on behalf of Georgians, because here we are here truly to protect Georgia citizens, which everybody in this body was elected to do. We stand in unison and harmony, and I appreciate the questions before related to that. I could talk all day about this. I'm happy to field any questions that anybody may have. And I'm sorry if I went over my time.
All right, any questions? Chairman, Vice Chair Reeves.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate the applause and the support, but these are the kinds of things that we are dealing with every day. These are the kinds of things that we're up against. These are the sorts of things that you're not going to be told about, you know, and these are the things that you need to know about. I mean, it's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense for them to try to advance these sorts of things, to try to, keep folks from bringing a claim when the harm has been caused. There's another thing I want y'all to hear. Nick, who was testified against another bill that was just brought, and I want you to hear what he just testified to just a few weeks ago. And I also want you all to know this, and I may say this 3 or 4 times, and don't let me forget a couple things. Y'all have cards on your tables. If you have any questions, fill those out. We will field every question and try to follow up with everybody. Not all tonight. I mean, we'll stay here afterwards to meet with people privately. But importantly, make sure that you follow up with those things, and on the QR code that we provided, make sure that you contact legislators if you need to. But I want you to hear next with regard to what Nick had to say with regard to the bill they tried to advance just a month ago. And recognize this too, the legislature's in session till Thursday, okay? And they're trying to change the law now, and they're trying to do everything they can to change the law. So it's important that we all act now, because we have no control over them passing or not passing something. Sir? Well, I'll get to you. So, but I appreciate that we've got to get through everything, but the session ends at the end of this week, so it's important for everybody to be aware of that. But I want you to hear about this particular bill.
Make no mistake about it, this bill is a full attack on victims who are everyday Georgians and who have done nothing wrong. I have some of my clients down here today, like Martha Bradford. She's sitting right behind me. Very appreciative of her coming down today. Martha Bradford's a Whitfield County public school bus driver who's retired and lives on a family farm. That family farm is contaminated with PFAS contaminants. She's had uterine cancer and kidney cancer. Her daughter had uterine cancer and had to have a complete hysterectomy in her 20s. There is no windfall to someone like Martha Bradford. All she wants to do is clean up her property so that something like this does not happen again. I have the Fletcher family with me, whose creek in their backyard is downstream from a Mohawk plant and runs at nearly 2,000 times the EPA drinking water limit. They raise their family, they homeschool their kids on their property, they eat crops that they grow, and they raise chickens. They don't do any of that anymore. There is no windfall for a family like the Fletcher family. They are true victims. I am not your average plaintiff's attorney. I am a special assistant attorney general. My day job is I defend the state of Georgia in litigated matters all the way from Clayton to Thomasville and wrongful death actions. This is not your average piece of litigation. This is different. This is about people, and this is a tax on people. It's an attack on victims, and if passed in its current form, it's my personal belief that it's shameful. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Nick did a great job testifying. He works tirelessly every day in this space for our clients and for folks in this room. So getting started is what we recommend. If you look at your QR code, if you'll sign up for PFAS Georgia, if you'd like to schedule an appointment with us, if you'd like to reach out, go to the website, find out more information. But it's right there if any of you would look at the QR code or the materials that you've been provided. As you can imagine, for us, it's to deal with such large numbers of people in the ways that we're doing this, it's got to be very efficient. But we will meet with anybody. We have an office in Dalton. We are around the clock working. We've got it staffed with an incredible team, and I want to recognize some of that team. But before we get to that, I want to turn things over to Erin. Erin Brockovich is the #1 consumer advocate in the United States. She's the most recognized person in the United States when it comes to anything dealing with water or environmental issues. She started with the Hinckley Project in California, as you all know. She's an absolute hero of mine. We've worked with her day in and day out the last several years. I didn't know her 5 years ago, but I've never seen anybody that's so committed, somebody that will show up. She will stay here tonight till the last person leaves and talk to you. I've watched her do it over and over again. She will pray with folks. She lives in California. I mean, she comes here. She's been in Dalton now. She's at Rome tonight, but she's been in Dalton in Northwest Georgia countless times. And it's the folks of Northwest Georgia who reached out to her and told her about all of the problems that were going on in Northwest Georgia, which is unique. And she will tell you the things that she's seen. But rather than spending more time with me on the stage, which you don't need, you need to hear from Erin. So without further ado, if you will all please join me in welcoming Erin Brockovich.
Hello, Rome, Georgia. How are you all tonight? That's probably what I'm going to talk about tonight. I could talk forever with all of you, but this is going to be something that is going to require you to show up. It will require a lot of courage for you to find up and stand up and find your voice. That's the one thing that I have learned over 30 years in working in environmental issues and the communities. More often than not, they have been harmed. They are concerned. They've tried to show up, but oftentimes people don't believe them, and they back away from having further conversations. And what I want you to do is to learn everything you can, and hopefully tonight and other meetings we'll be able to teach you about the PFAS, the perfluorooctanoic acid. It took me a week to learn how to say it. Perfluorooctanoic acid. I think the hardest thing for me in the 30 years is coming to communities with information that's very dark and can be very frightening and can be overwhelming. And it breaks my heart. I've worked in too many communities and I fall in love with them. They're nice, they have families, they're scared, they don't know who to believe. You know, I was born and raised in the Midwest. And I was raised by a family that taught me it would be my obligation, my duty, to be a steward to the greatest gifts we have and to protect and defend it. That's your land, that's your water, that's your air, that's your health. And all of this has been destroyed by PFAS. This is not a fire drill. This is really going on. And this is something that is not only going to affect the entire state of Georgia, but it is going to affect the entire United States of America and beyond. We've been talking for 10 years that this chemical will be the largest contaminant in history, and we are there. This chemical didn't just show up in a municipal system where they get new filtrations, and this is very necessary. We have to look at our infrastructure in these municipal systems. You have to have the right filtration system to keep this chemical out of your municipal water. But it doesn't end there. It's in the aquifers. It's leaking from your landfills, multiple landfills. It's in your spring water. It gets used as fertilizer across the farmlands. And there's a whole process to this chemical that's quite concerning. And this is facts. And this is science. And I'm not here joking around. This is a really serious issue. And I don't know that everyone always understands the seriousness of it. So, in ways to help explain it, we've been very involved in Maine. So in Maine, and this is very important for the farmers, because a lot of this PFAS gets sent to wastewater treatment facilities, and then they come out and spread it as like a fertilizer in a sludge that's laced with PFAS. That contaminates the land. It percolates to the aquifer. It damages and pollutes the aquifer that goes to your wells, that goes to your municipal system, and gets in the food chain. There's a reason it's called forever chemicals, and Bob, who I worked with for 30 years, will explain all of that to you. PFAS isn't just one chemical, it's a family of about 13,000 different chemicals. And it's dangerous. Up in Maine, and how it got discovered was actually through the USDA. They found out that the cattle there, the dairy farmers' milk on the grocery shelf contained PFAS. It took 15 months to report that to the state. So the state had to get very busy going out and putting filtration systems on all the wellheads. But once it's in the food chain, you can't drink the milk anymore. They had to kill their cattle, their dairy cows. It gets uptaken by the chickens and in the eggs. They couldn't eat their eggs anymore. They can't organically farm anymore. It's gotten into the food supply. So from water, topsoil, to the aquifer, through the land, to the food chain, to us. It took a long time for science to come out about this chemical. It was introduced decades ago. So the numbers that you're going to hear tonight from Bob, who's been out here testing your rivers, your creeks, your streams, your landfills, you're going to hear numbers from him. And I want you to remember, the numbers that we're talking about today are high compared to what the new MCLs, which is a maximum contaminant limit set by law where they should be. So they're very big numbers still. But that is a number that's a lower number of a higher number in time. This has been transporting through your water system for a long time. And when this information comes out and how I end up showing up is it's you, the community members, that start recognizing things. They start seeing patterns in their children. They start talking to other neighbors. That child has the same symptoms that that child has. They start noticing things with their livestock, with their animals. And unbeknownst to them, they're all reporting to me. So then I can start seeing a pattern. That tells me when we need to come into the community. This is all about you. And as I said, this is about you finding your voice and you working together as a community. In every single situation I've ever been involved in, I'm gonna generally tell you it starts with one pissed off mom, and she's gonna go get 10 moms, and those 10 moms are gonna go get 40 moms, and those 40 moms are gonna turn into 80 moms, and they're on the move every single time. We're here to give you that support. But it's worrying me that this has gotten to a point where I'm not always sure everyone understands the severity of what's happening. This, for us in the state of Georgia, started in Dalton. And now we're here in Rome. And now because of your voices, the entire state is looking at you. If not the entire world is looking at you. And that's a good thing. No community can defend itself in the absence of the truth. Every community I've been in, they can handle the truth. What they cannot handle is the lie and the deception. And that is exactly what has happened here. This has gone on way too long. We have agencies that were notified decades ago that this would be a problem. It took till 2016 for the science to come in. This is a chemical that caused testicular cancer, thyroid cancer, infertility. And that's scaring me because now we have farmers reporting their cows are sterile, their donkeys are sterile. Animals aren't reproducing. And one of the biggest things about this is it affects the endocrine system. Ovaries, uterus, hormones, thyroid, fertility. You need to rise up. And all of us stand together. And that's the only way this is gonna work. And it's the only way it has ever worked. And send a very loud message. You're gonna get smart, you're gonna be educated on it, you're gonna start recognizing those patterns, you're gonna start making notes, you're gonna start talking to your neighbors. You might be surprised how many of you are already experiencing these issues. This has been a silent killer. In Hinckley, the chromium-6 I could see in the water. It can run purple. There's no color change here. There's no smell here. And you're gonna get pushback from neighbors or people who are upset, but you need to know. When I started working in Hinckley, everybody told me, you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, thank God. You're not a scientist, you're not a politician, what do you know? Maybe everyone else asks themselves that same thing now that you're in this position. But you don't have to be any of that to be a human and to know what you're experiencing, to know what your family's going through. And I knew enough to tell you I didn't have to be any of that to be a human and to tell you that two-headed frogs and green water is a problem. Tonight might be an eye-opener for you when you have time as your community comes together to get to know each other and find out what you're experiencing together. We're here for that support. But I am here to tell you, this isn't a fire drill. Bob and I have been working on this for decades. We've now seen the state of Maine, and it's hurtful. They cannot eat the fish that they fish. They cannot eat the deer that they hunt. They cannot have their chicken eggs. The same thing is now happening in Michigan. This is going to be a collective action, starting in Dalton, moving to you, to waking up your whole state. We can begin to take steps to change the forward progress of this and to look at your health and what your impacts are and how we can begin to make that better for you. I know this feels horribly overwhelming to you. I'm the person that when I show up and when I leave, everyone's saying, don't invite her again. It's a lot of information to take in. But I want you to know something. None of this changes without you. I wrote a book called Superman's Not Coming, and boy howdy is he not. It will be up to us, and we don't have to wait for everything to magically trickle down from the top or wherever we think it's coming from or whoever's going to save our ass, because they haven't. This didn't start yesterday. This has been going on for a while. This has been covered up for a while. But I don't care that Superman's not coming, because you're here. And we're better off without that idea or expectation that that's going to happen. We find our voice. You are the only thing that I believe in. I have dealt with so many communities. You live it. You breathe it. You're experiencing it. It's your child. You know what's going on. That's what I believe. Don't let anyone else tell you that's not what's going on. I'm here tonight for you, and I always will be here just for you. And I think the best thing that I can do is to encourage you. And it's scary in situations like this because somebody's going to push back against you, and somebody's not going to like what you have to say. But this resides, especially for the mothers, right here in the gut. You know it. This is about, I'll go to my Wizard of Oz story. We all know that story. There's a fabulous political allegory to it. But at the end of the day, the message was, did we get lost on a road of an illusion? Did we get comfortable or complacent in believing what was being told or hidden from us? But here's the message that I want to send to you tonight, that in the book, The Wizard of Oz, they learned, and in that film, The Wizard of Oz, and I'm from Kansas, and I'm a big Wizard of Oz fan. You have had the brain and the critical thinking. You have had the heart, and you have the courage to stand up and say something if you've been harmed. And Bob again is going to share with you tonight a lot of information. We're not guessing here. We have been testing here for a long time. I feel like Bill Paxton from the movie Twister. It's already here. And I'm saying this with every ounce of courage that I have to you, not to scare you. But nothing's going to change until you get involved. So with that, I'm a reminder. Maybe we got lost and maybe you've been lost. Maybe you're scared, maybe you're confused, and maybe you're uncertain. I want you to remember the power of your instincts. And this happened for me being home from Kansas. You know dang good and well what's going on in your own backyard, with your animals, with your farm, with your family, with your health. When I was a child outside playing and the sky turned green and the birds stopped chirping, and I could feel the barometric pressure pushing down on me, I didn't need to call the Weather Channel to ask if an F4 or an F5 tornado was coming. I needed to get to shelter. And in a situation like this, don't be worried yourself too much about the numbers, because they're high. And new MCLs are set very low. There's a ginormous discrepancy here. And the danger that has been put upon all of us. I want you to stay with your neighbors, your family, in your gut, in your instincts, in your heart. And I want you to think about this. This cannot continue to go on. And I heard Ben say it, and this is the only political thing you're going to hear from me because I don't like talking about it. Our environment, our water, our land, and our health does not belong to the Republicans or the Democrats. This is about all of us, every one of them. Get together, work together, and stop this ongoing bullshit with destroying our environment. I'm counting on you, and I'm going to stand with you. Rome, Georgia, speak up, rise up. We got your back, and we're going to change things. And it won't happen without you. Thank you. I'll see you later.
She has dedicated her entire life to this mission and missions to help other people. I'm struck by stuff. You know, we talk about a lot of these things, and I shared this last night. I was driving up and stayed in Rome, but went to Dalton last night. I was listening to the radio, and some of y'all will relate to this, but hopefully everybody will. There was a singer, Don Williams. Y'all ever heard Don Williams? He's a country music singer. A lot of people here, Don Williams, yeah. Yeah, so my grandmother in Phoenix City, Alabama, used to play a lot of country. I was raised on that, Don Williams and, you know, just Conway Twitty, Loretta Lynn. Conway Twitty's a Jenkins. Harold Jenkins is his real name, and he's a cousin of my grandmother. My grandmother's Ruth Jenkins Hall. Every time he'd come on stage, they'd always say, "There's a Jenkins." But the Don Williams song, "I Believe in You," was on the radio yesterday when I came up from Dalton, and it just hit me in a way that I listened to it differently than I ever have. Because Don Williams says in the song, "I Believe in You," is the title of it. Y'all look it up. But there's a line in there, or lyrics, where he says, "I like to think of God as love. He's down below, he's up above. He's watching people everywhere. He knows who does and does not care." And I was just struck by that. And then when I hear Erin speak, that's somebody who cares, right? She cares. And everybody in this room cares. You wouldn't be here tonight if you didn't, right? I mean, so what I'd like everybody to do is, if you've got your card in front of y'all, you mind y'all just kind of holding it up if you got these? So you got those in front of you. If anybody's filled them out, we've got folks in blue shirts who will come around and pick them up. And y'all can kind of, while we're still talking and still presenting, just be sure, because I want you all to be heard. And if you want, you know, we'll try to field questions and we'll follow up with people, but we want everybody's voice to be heard. So if y'all would just indulge us with that, I would appreciate it. I also want to recognize our team that's working every day, all day, including all of these people in blue shirts. You can see all these people that are circling this and the number of folks that are on our team. The legal team, Nick and I and our firm are on it, but we have Arnold Denikin out of Texas and Tracy Fox, Sean Tracy at his firm. These are some of the best and brightest environmental plaintiffs lawyers in the country. I knew when we were putting this project together the corporate interests we were going to take on, and I knew that my little law firm, you know, with 4 lawyers in it, could not possibly take on these sort of corporations. There's absolutely no way we could do that on our own. They would money whip us, they would out-resource us, they would put lawyers on it at the biggest law firms in the country, from Atlanta and Chicago, New York, wherever they could get them, and it would be a very difficult matchup. One thing I've always known, and I played sports my entire life, but I always have known about matchups. And if somebody's got great athletes on the other team, you better have them on your team. Because if you don't, it's not going to go well for you. So we work with a lot of colleges and a lot of NIL and do a lot of that stuff, and it's always been apparent. But in our business, it's no different, because it is it is a litigated thing where they're on the other side of the case from us. So our team includes some of the best and brightest lawyers. You're not going to find a lot of lawyers in the United States who are well equipped to take on an environmental case to do the work on a contingency fee and be able to front the expenses like we're all able to do with the lawyers that we have on our team. It is a very difficult proposition, and it's very challenging, but we're on the side of the angels. There's no doubt in our mind about this, and we're doing the right thing, and we are doing everything we can to get our cases to trial. Our team includes the community outreach team, and you can see the folks here, many of whom are present, as well as our legal team. We have a PFAS testing expert. Bob Bowcock is going to come up and speak in a minute. He has an entire team which will go around and do testing of your wells, your land, your property, and has done this at no expense to folks. We've fronted all those expenses so it doesn't cost anyone anything, and if you'd like us to test, we'll be happy to test. We have the largest, and Bob will talk about this, the largest data set in the United States when it comes to Northwest Georgia. We've had folks in all kinds of parts of the country that have asked for our information and our data because no group of people and no one outside of Bob and sort of this team within our team has been able to put together that kind of data, which we can show you the hot spots in Northwest Georgia and the areas that aren't quite as hot. Our case management team also is in Dalton that will work daily and will schedule meetings, work with clients and follow up every day, coordinate testing. We've got an incredible group handling that. We have a business operations team that deals with the testing, program lead, business operations. I mean, this is a very, very obviously large project, and it takes a lot of people to make this happen. You may hear Nick and me talk and others, but there's a true large team of us that work on this every day. Before we get to Bob, I want to just touch on a few things about the crisis in Northwest Georgia and the media coverage. Since we've gotten involved in this, the number of stories that have come out in the newspaper in Rome and in Dalton, television in Atlanta and Chattanooga has been unbelievable. In fact, there's a national frontline story about this, about the crisis in Northwest Georgia. And a lot of the reason for this is while PFAS is everywhere, what was discovered by 3M Daikin and DuPont, the manufacturers of PFAS, is that they would sell it and bring it in by rail car to Northwest Georgia, largely to the carpet industry. Now, for those of you that don't know what PFAS is Erin said, it's a chemical, it's known as a forever chemical, and it basically was a chemical that was designed and developed during World War II, during the atomic bomb. When the atomic bomb was being built, they were trying to find a chemical that was heat resistant, stain resistant, and water resistant, and industry figured out, well, we can take that and make, Stainmaster carpet in it. We can Scotch guard that. We can use that in a lot of applications. Well, when you take that PFAS and you dunk it in a product, and then that water goes into a water supply, and it contaminates the human body. To show you and illustrate a little bit how toxic it is, 4 parts per trillion is kind of the metric that determines what is toxic in the human body. Now, 4 parts per trillion would be analogous to if you took your bathtub and filled it full of sand, and you took out just 4 tiny grains of sand, that'd be 4 parts per trillion. It ain't much. It doesn't take much, okay? Now, it stays in your body. It doesn't pass through your kidneys and your liver as other things do, and it can stay in the male body for 7 years. With a mom who's pregnant, the baby and the mom have the same toxicity. When the baby's born, and we see a lot of birth defects, we see a lot of issues with regard to that, but when a mom breastfeeds, her toxicity level will actually decrease and the babies will go up. So if they're both 20/20, right, for example, when the baby's born, when she breastfeeds, hers may go down to 17/18, the babies may go 20/21 and will go up. But it is absolutely tragic what we've seen, the predominance of cancers. We've talked to folks at UAB, folks at Emory, and the blood testing that we've seen with the toxicity levels is devastating. So that's sort of the background of what PFAS is and why there's such a high concentration. You take a small area of the state or a small area of the country with that incredible amount of concentrated PFAS in it, and that's what's created the issue in Northwest Georgia, and that's why there's more issues here than there are statistically elsewhere. Now, with regard to the crisis, takeaways from investigation into toxic forever chemical legacy of the South carpet industry. This is from the Associated Press. This isn't like some local newspaper. This is the Associated Press. This is a national crisis in Northwest Georgia. Atlanta First News has covered this repeatedly. They've got a great reporter, Andy Pilati, who has been incredible in terms of what he's been able to provide information. Forever Chemicals, carpet companies in a crisis that's not fully understood. With Frontline, I encourage folks to learn more about this and the Frontline stories. Atlanta Journal-Constitution has talked about this repeatedly. And you can Google this stuff and you can continue to know more about it. Chattanooga Times Free Press sponsored a defense bill that would shield corporate companies from PFAS lawsuits. We talked about that, and we've been successful to this point with regard to hopefully defeating this. Now, I'm an attorney, and I'm not the water expert, but Bob Bowcock is, and he's going to come up next. Bob is the top water expert in the United States when it comes to PFAS. He's worked on this for years. He's worked with Erin very closely. He's worked with her with Hinckley and worked with her and worked in a bipartisan way with Republicans and Democrats and works every single day because, again, it's not about politics. It's not about a political race. It's about the human race. And Bob, I think, it will have and provide you information that even Erin and I can't really articulate in the ways that Bob can. I can't say enough great things about him as a person, and he is just so knowledgeable about this, and I think you'll really enjoy the things that he'll share. So if you will, all please join me in welcoming Bob Bowcock. Thank you. Clicker? You good? Yeah.
Up and down.
Up and down, you got it.
Down is down. Very good. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you all coming out tonight. I want to bring it down to the area that we're in, down to Rome and Floyd County. It's important that you understand why is PFAS Georgia, that spent the last 18 months up around Dalton and Chatsworth, drive an hour down to Rome and kind of, start talking to you folks about what's going on. It's important that you understand that. The numbers I'm going to give you here tonight are from the Dalton area, mostly north of here. We do have Rome numbers that are specific. Since this is your community, I think you probably know more than anyone that this actually, for Northwest Georgia, started here in Rome. It started in Rome when the city of Rome actually sued the city of Dalton over the PFAS coming down and contaminating your drinking water. Okay, they sued not only the city of Dalton, but they sued the Dalton utilities, the carpet industry, and a number of other people in order to win one of the biggest legal settlements to get you the most state-of-the-art drinking water treatment plant in the country. So that's something that's a great success for your city. They did it long before we got involved, but we've been monitoring that and we've been watching that. You already have clean water. They've gone into your treatment plant and they've upgraded your filters to get you the granular activated carbon that was pulling that PFAS out while they were getting the new treatment plant designed, new treatment plant built. So, what's up on the slide here is what is PFAS. And you've heard Ben talk about it. You've heard Erin talk about it. You've heard it called the forever chemical. And it's important to understand that, but it's also important to understand it's from the carpet industry in this particular part of the world, but it's in a lot of products. The case that we worked on up in Maine, it was predominantly paper products. Paper plates, paper boxes, things like that. They were coated so that the pizza didn't leak through the bottom of the box. Your Chinese takeout didn't leak out the side of the box. The Chinette paper is the ones that make the little bowls you put your chili in. That was actually coated with the perfluorinated compounds, the same thing that Scotchgard and Teflon were made out of in order for you not to burn your hand when you picked up the coffee cup. Okay, so those are the kinds of things that we had up in Maine. Here, again, it's carpet. You go over to Michigan, it was Hush Puppy shoes. The stuff, remember when you used to buy the shoes and right next to it there was a rack that had laces and shoe polish and the shoe spray. That was Teflon and that was Scotchgard, and that's exactly where that stuff came from. It's in a lot of products, and you're going to be exposed to it in a lot of products. There are over 11,000 chemicals registered in the PFAS family. Okay, when I got involved in PFAS in drinking water about 12 years ago, PFOA and PFOS were actually tested for by US EPA on a national level 12 years ago. And the laboratory was able to detect down to 400 parts per trillion. Okay? Then about 8 years ago, they were able to detect down to 70 parts per trillion. And that's when people started saying, hey, I got it over here, I got it over there, I've got a problem over here. Well, now they can detect below zero. I mean, they can literally, 0 parts per trillion, in parts per quadrillion. They can actually get down into that level of testing of about 54 of the 11,000 compounds. So you're starting to hear things when you pick up the press up in the Cape Fear River, University of North Carolina. Dr. Kanapi up there is worried about the C3s and the C2s that are associated with air conditioning systems in your homes. When you recharge the air conditioning system in your home, there's a PFAS associated with that. So those are your ultra short chain. Then we were talking about the 4 chain, which is the PFBS. That's used in the carpet material backing to make it stronger. Then you get over here to the C6, which was supposed to be Gen X. It was supposed to be the chemical that would break down in the environment. We can't even get C3s to break down in the environment, but the C6s were supposed to be Gen X, the replacement chemical from DuPont. We haven't found a drop in the state of Georgia, so they pretty much just skipped over that, never really instituted the C6 or the Gen X in the carpet industry. So then you get over here to the C8s, PFOA, PFOS. Those are the ones we're most concerned about. You heard Ben talk about the fact that it was part of the Manhattan Project. One of the things that we've learned over the last 18 months, and that's this where you see chained and branched, okay? A branch is pretty much what you're thinking is it's a long stick, and they would have carbon molecules in a stick, okay? That would be a branch, okay? Chained would look like an octagon, 8-sided stop sign, okay? And what that has told us is we're about 96% sure that the chemicals used in Northwest Georgia are from DuPont and 3M, period. They're not Chinese knockoffs. They didn't come from Romania. We are actually able to fingerprint those chemicals and the use of those chemicals in this industry. How are people exposed to PFAS? As I said, they're in contact lens material. Everybody in here that's got a screen or a laptop or an iPhone, the reason that even if you pick up your iPhone and it's a little hot, if it didn't have PFAS inside that iPhone, it'd be a whole lot hotter. It might even catch on fire and it might burn your hands. It's in microchips. It's in your laptop. It's in a lot of products. It's not going to come out of circulation very quickly. But, much like we were saying when we were talking to people in the carpet industry, carpet is manufactured. We need to do things to mitigate what we can do better. And if we have knowledge, stop flushing the stuff right down the street. I will tell you, in March 31st, 2026, if it rained today somewhere in Northwest Georgia, the carpet industry flushed thousands of parts right down your street. Okay, it is still going on. We've got to cut off that source. So it's important for the group to kind of understand how did it get in the environment and what makes the Northwest Georgia area so catastrophic. So particular to Rome, and one of the important parts of the case in Rome is up in Dalton, they actually had a spray field for the biosolids. So if you're manufacturing widgets or stuffed animals or carpet, whatever you're doing, you throughout the day, you use these chemicals, you use all kinds of manufacturing, and then the night crew comes in and cleans up. All that stuff goes into the sewer system, okay? And it mixes with the community's sewage, and then it goes through a process. When you get to a wastewater treatment plant, the water is separated from the sludge or the solids, and we know what we put down the toilet, so we know what the solids are mostly made up of. Okay, and they press that into a sludge or a biosolid. That's been used on land for agriculture in Northwest Georgia for over 65, 70 years. Okay, and it literally was spread up in Dalton by Dalton Utilities, and that's what they claimed migrated down, not claimed, it's what happened, migrated down the river. What I want to talk to you about tonight is the fact that, yes, that's one of the things that it came from, but it came from a lot of other ways, and it's going to continue to pollute until we collectively get our arms around cutting off the source. PFAS then soaks into the ground, okay? Once it comes down a creek or down a river or whatever, it soaks into the ground and it goes out, and it gets brought up in groundwater wells. If one of the things I've said about Northwest Georgia, I'm not from here, but what I've learned is if you got 10 acres and you don't have a pond, you ain't a man. Okay, everybody in Northwest Georgia on 10 acres or more has got a pond out in the front. And many of those ponds are either fed by a well that's not used for drinking water if you're on city water, or it is fed by the well that you're using as drinking water. The other thing is a lot of them are spring fed. So I've gone on 10-acre parcels where the well is zero. It's not in the well in that part of the aquifer, but the spring that's feeding the pond is, 30,000 parts. Okay, remember the regulatory standard's 4, so 30,000 parts is coming up at this spring, and it's basically mixing with the pond water. It rains on that pond, it gets full, goes down a creek, and contaminates the 10, 15 properties on that creek down south of that spring. So this is what happens is once the biosolids are up on top, it rains, it percolates down into the aquifer, it can show up 20 miles away in a spring, hotter than heck, and the groundwater well right next to it could be zero. The geology in Northwest Georgia is very, very complex. So once it soaks in, it can come up that way. A lot of people have groundwater wells on their property that they use for irrigation, for their gardens, for their crops, whatever they're doing. Some people just water their front lawns with it, and then they have water in the home. That can all contribute to the contamination of the land we're going to talk about next. The crops absorb this PFAS. Okay, what I'm going to talk to you about tonight as far as what the adsorptive capabilities are is PFAS likes to follow the protein chains. So any of your leafy green vegetables, things like that. Alfalfa for the cattle industry, the dairies. There's a lot of people out here that will actually grow 40 acres of alfalfa and run either beef cattle on them or dairy cows on them. That goes straight into the milk system, straight into the meat processing system. I will tell you that when we discovered the case up in Maine, it wasn't because we went out and sampled somebody's water well and said, oh, you're above 4 parts per trillion in your drinking water well. No, it was found at 400 parts by the USDA in a bottle of milk at the grocery store. And we literally traced it back from that grocery store to that farm, found out that farm had been contaminated by biosolids land application from the wastewater treatment plant that was receiving the paper mill's wastewater at night, much like the carpet industry. They had a land applied that on the alfalfa. The cows were basically consuming it. Protein follows the milk right on out, ends up on the grocery store shelf. So those are the kinds of ways that it can go from crops into the food chain. The livestock ingests the PFAS. Okay, you guys know Northwest Georgia. If it's not a carpet mill, it's perhaps a chicken hatchery. Okay, there's a lot of chicken farms in Northwest Georgia. If you have free-range chickens on your property and they go out and they start scratching up the yard, even the free-range chickens, just being in the dirt, a chicken's not the smartest animal in the world. When they peck at bugs and things like that, about half of what they eat's dirt. And that dirt has a considerable amount of PFAS in it. And we'll get to that next. This is number 5 here. This one's one that concerns me more than anything about Northwest Georgia, because as I've gone out, I'm not the guy from Hollywood that came up here and going to talk to you about, PFAS. You're looking at the guy that's gone out. I pull the samples myself. If any of you are from the Dalton area or the Chatsworth area, I've been on your farm. I dig the holes. I put it in the cups. I get the laboratory reports. So you've heard said tonight here, this PFAS Georgia data set is the most comprehensive data set of water, soil, and house dust anywhere in the world, not just the nation. No one in the world has accomplished what we've accomplished. We've sampled wastewater treatment plants, we've sampled landfills, we've sampled private properties, we've sampled springs, rivers, creeks, groundwater wells. We've done it all, and we have it in a very sophisticated database that's going to tell us a whole lot. Back to what scares me about Northwest Georgia. Those ponds, I've watched kids fish those ponds and eat those fish. Okay? I was with a gentleman last night. Turkey season started 10 days ago. He's already bagged a turkey. Okay? In not Northwest Georgia, but in Maine, you get a hunting deer tag. You don't get to take the deer home. You have to turn it over to the state for a necropsy because the meat is no longer even edible because it's got more PFAS in the meat for the deer than what you're going to get if you just go out and continue to drink city water that's got PFAS in it. It's just that bad. And I will tell you that the fish are that bad. And finally, that brings us to the humans consume PFAS. You're going to get PFAS not only from consuming water with PFAS contamination in it, not only from consuming agricultural products, grown, crops or things like that. It does not follow the carbohydrate chain. So we're not seeing it in the potatoes or the carrots or even the corn. You'll see it in the green stalk that comes up from the corn, but in anything in it that has a sugar or carbohydrate in it, the PFAS stays out of that. It's mostly coming up through the protein chain. So that's kind of what you're going to see on that. But what I want you to understand is, now that you've all had your dinner, and I'm glad you enjoyed it, but most humans, I don't care whether you're 6 years old or 60, we consume about 1 gram of dirt every day, okay? Whether we're breathing it in, we're mowing the lawn, we get a little bit of the dust coming up, we're consuming dirt. It's on your lettuce, it's on your vegetables. You touch stuff, you put it on your hands, you put your hands near your mouth. We eat dirt, okay? And in Northwest Georgia, even down here in Rome, that dirt has a lot of PFAS in it. So we're consuming it other ways. You're going to hear it's the shiny side of the McDonald's burger wrapper paper. Not anymore, but it was for a very long time. The microwave popcorn. Microwave popcorn was one of the industries in food where it was used considerably so that you didn't burn your hand when you pulled the popcorn bag out. The oil didn't leak through the bag. All those types of things. The inside of popcorn bags for microwave were totally coated with PFAS. So you're going to consume it. What we're here to talk to you about tonight is how do you mitigate that? How do you expose yourself to less? A lot of people in here, because I've seen you and talked to you before, have had their blood tested by Emory, okay? And a lot of the people in Northwest Georgia far exceed the public health standards in their blood. So, drinking water regulations. I just want to get this out here so that everybody can understand it, okay? Because the headlines, I don't care which media outlet you follow, but fake news is fake news, okay? And what I mean by that is April 10th, 2024, the United States Environmental Protection Agency issued their final ruling on perfluorinated compounds in drinking water under the Safe Drinking Water Act at US EPA. They regulated PFOA at 4 parts per trillion, PFOS at 4 parts per trillion, and then PFBS and Gen X and the others. There were 4 other compounds that were regulated with a comprehensive math problem that didn't really have a whole lot of health studies associated with it. It was called a health index. First time they ever issued a health index for a drinking water standard before. Very, very complicated. And they issued that. So there are 6 regulated drinking water contaminants in the United States today. Today. I've read headlines for over a year now that said Trump administration rolls back regulations for drinking water. I've heard, they've extended this, they've done that, they've passed on this lawsuit. None of that is true. The regulation that was put in place is still in place. There are a lot of states still operating on a headline, okay, but the regulation is in place. The EPA has suggested extending the compliance period 2 years for PFOA and PFOS, and sending the 4 health index regulated compounds back to the scientists to come up with something a little bit better, okay? And that's all that's happened. It hasn't even come into effect. He hasn't won that. The courts told him he couldn't do it. The Office of Budget and Management says we're going to look at it. But as I stand here today, the April regulation is still 100% in full force and effect. Everything else, fake news. Health issues and exposure to PFAS. Okay, this is where, it's not good news, because I will tell you that the exposure and the bioaccumulation in all of our bodies has health effects associated with it, okay? And I'll try to put that into a scale that I hope you can understand. When I got into the water industry 40 years ago, we were concerned with the chlorinated solvents, dry cleaner chemicals, dip tanks for spray booths and things like that. The volatile organics, they would chlorinate carbon molecules. They were considered volatile. You'd smell them. Gasoline is a volatile organic chemical. There are all these types of chemicals out there that, quite frankly, if I put a dropper of one of the gasoline in my coffee tonight and I drank it, it would taste horrible. I might probably vomit or get sick, because my body's going to say, hey, I'm rejecting this. But if I actually were able to ingest it, in about 72 hours, my liver and my kidneys are going to get rid of it, okay? It's gone. It might cause some sort of impact on me for drinking it, not real smart, but it's probably gone, and that's probably not going to cause me any further harm. It's long-term exposure. If you work at a gas station and you pump gas 50,000 times a day, you're going to get exposed and probably get cancer to gas. But if I just did that little exercise, my body got rid of it, okay? When I start talking about the PFAS, and people are like, oh, 1 part per trillion, 2 parts per trillion, 4 parts per trillion, that's ridiculous, that's low. Yeah, but that's not what that means. In a glass of water, there could be, how many molecules of water are in there that would lead to how many molecules of PFAS are in there. It's not 4, in a glass of water, it's a lot more than 4, okay? And what happens is those molecules get in your body. So if you were, a complete virgin to drinking water in Northwest Georgia, you might have 1 part per trillion in your blood. But tomorrow, or your next glass of water, you're going to have 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. And it bioaccumulates. So my liver and kidneys are not getting rid of it. I'm actually ingesting it, and it's sitting in my protein, meaning it's sitting in my liver. It's sitting in my thyroid. It's sitting in my reproductive organs, okay? And it's the kind of thing that it may sit in my body, and I may have no effect. But because it's a foreign substance that has carcinogenic effects, PFAS causes cancer. Known fact, no question about it. Okay, which is why the maximum contaminant level goal at the EPA is 0. Anything that causes cancer has a maximum contaminant level goal of 0. But then they'll do a whole bunch of math problems and talk to a whole bunch of doctors and come up with something that's actually capable of being treated, and that's where they set the MCL at. So if it causes cancer, your maximum contaminant level goal is 0, which PFAS is, but they set the standard at 4 because they know a treatment plant can take it out. It's economical. It's not going to kill you as fast as 40, but it's not as protective as 0. Okay, and then you get these chemicals out there, and they stay in your body. Everything causes cancer. Everything causes endocrine disruption or reproductive harm. What freaked the scientists out more than anything, you heard Ben talk about the fact that since it follows the protein chain, it literally, if you give birth today, your blood level and your baby's blood level are right on it. Okay, they're identical. If you breastfeed, as Ben was saying, yours go down, baby's goes up. What do we do at 90 days? At 90 days, we do measles, mumps, and rubella. What they found was that the immunization was literally 33% less effective. Okay, so because of that, they set the MCL so rapidly, and it's still in effect today. Bioaccumulation, we've covered this. It means 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. You're going to have it for 10 years. These are the biosolids. This is the top photograph as a wastewater treatment plant. If you look at the bottom photograph, that's actually a site here in Northwest Georgia where they dump it in piles and then they spread it on our crops. Now, what does Georgia say about biosolids? What Georgia says about biosolids is if your property took biosolids, and many people are aware of it, I will tell you that I found biosolids all the way down on the Florida border from the Dalton area. So it makes its way around. Those biosolids, if you've taken them on your property, the state of Georgia right now is saying you have to meet drinking water standards at the property line. That means if it rains, hits the biosolids, and that rain leaves your property, you have to meet drinking water standard at the property line. Is not going to happen. It's not capable of happening. So Georgia's doing something from August 1st, 2024, more than any other state in the union right now. Crisis. I want to talk about, these are all Dalton area samples, Dalton, Chatsworth, that area, Ringgold. So our top 5 water result samples, we're not talking about 4. We're not talking about anything even close to 4. We got 369,000 parts per trillion in water. The top 5 soil results, 10,555,000. And this is right next to a playground for children. It's literally right next to a playground for children. Top 5 dust results. I want to explain dust and dirt so that you understand it. If your pond on your property is 300, your soil adjacent to it's probably about 3,000. We're probably looking at 300,000 in your attic dust. And that's because the attic dust, every time you cut the grass, the wind blows, it goes up into the attic or goes into the crawl space. That's protected from the environment, so it gives us an idea of what you've been exposed to over a period of time. So the dust in your attic and the dust under your house could be 10 years old. And so that's why you see these higher numbers when you get into the dust. Real quick, this is the water. 62.46% of the time, the area an hour north of here has failed the water test. Here's the heat map. You can see where it comes down to Rome, and you can see we've done some samples down here in Rome, and you can see we're headed in this direction. 2,154,000 parts per trillion right there in downtown Dalton in the soil. 73.18% of the time, the soil has failed. 10,555,000. I gotta step back. They're trying to get me to wrap up here, but I want to talk to you about immeasurable. Immeasurable means that the laboratory we send all these samples to, and we send out big ice chests full every week, okay? These laboratory samples go back there. We get these immeasurable results, and what they are is they're saying, the laboratory raises their hand and says, it was so high you broke our equipment, okay? So there's something to write home about. Northwest Georgia's actually breaking the laboratory equipment because the levels are so high. Here we go on the dust. 90% of dust samples in Northwest Georgia, 90% fail. With that, I'll be around to answer questions. I want to make sure we stay on time. And I'd like to have Nick come up and give you a little talk about where we're at with the legislation and what's going on here in Northwest Georgia. Thank you. Nick?
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be in Rome, Georgia tonight. My name is Nick Jackson. I'm an attorney at the Finley firm. We're primarily based out of Columbus and Atlanta. And 2 years ago, we opened a Dalton office, September of 2024, and we began this campaign that has truly become a movement in Northwest Georgia. It is one of the most incredible things that I've ever experienced in my life, especially as a young lawyer, standing next to Erin Brockovich, shoulder to shoulder on a Friday night in Chatsworth, Georgia, at our first town hall, where people came up to her and said, my 24-year-old son has testicular cancer. My 29-year-old daughter had uterine cancer and had to have a complete hysterectomy. My 40-year-old husband has early onset Alzheimer's with no genetic markers, right? These are real life stories. And in that moment for me, on a personal level, this entire thing became very, very real. Several months after that, I was actually giving a speech to the Rome Young Republicans, right? Young political groups across the country are beginning to focus on PFAS, and Rome Young Republicans is one of the groups. And there was a study out early on that released a blood sample of people across Northwest Georgia, and we used to include it in our slideshow. And one of those people was an individual in Rome, all right? And their blood level was off the charts. I mean, it was 10 times what anyone else was, right? Even compared to that in the people in the heart of carpet country in Dalton, right? And I remember I was getting up here, I was naive, just talking in front of a group of people, giving them another statistic. And an individual in the back of the room raised his hand and he said, that was me. And he may be in the room tonight, I'm not sure. But in that moment, it really dawned on me just how real all of this is, how real it is to each and every one of you. And for the past 2 years, we've been in the courtroom almost every single day advocating for our clients, right? And like Ben talked about, our clients have such a unique way, really stepped up to advocate for people across Georgia. And that is just such an incredible thing that has happened and is one of the cornerstone moments of this campaign. It is the Erin Brockovich moment of this campaign. But as Ben so rightfully said, and you all need to be aware, I may not be able to get up here and give the same speech next year, right? If some politicians have it their way, I may not be able to give this same speech tomorrow, right? But today is a day when you can still join the fight, right? All these things that I'm going to be talking about from a litigation standpoint that we are experiencing in the courtroom, you have a unique opportunity to join this fight. But if corporate interests have it their way, you may not have that opportunity next year or even tomorrow. The legislature is still in session. And we have had to go down to Atlanta time and time again on a moment's notice with our clients to testify and defeat these bills. And we've done that time and time again, but I promise you one thing, we will never give up, but they aren't going to give up either. So the time is now. I encourage you to join our fight now and get your land tested. We have question cards that we handed out. I encourage you again, if you wrote questions, I know some of the tables ran out, raise your hand with a card. Someone on our team will come by and grab that card. But this is just a very simple question, but I wanted to share it. It says, what can I do to get my water tested? The first thing that you can do is call our Dalton office and see if you qualify for our criteria so that we can have a world-class expert come out to your property or someone under his supervision and test your water so that you at least know the status of PFAS contamination on your property, and then you can make a family decision about where you go next. So this is exactly why we're here. We are currently not taking bodily injury lawsuits, okay? There's a lot of research that's being done on that. I have been on conference call after conference call with some of the world's leading epidemiologists all across the country, at UAB, at UCLA Berkeley, all across the country. We still have yet to file a bodily injury lawsuit. We are here today about your property, okay? We represent over 1,100 landowners in Northwest Georgia. In the month of February, I attended 13 motion to dismiss hearings. That's where the defendants are saying they need to be thrown out of court. This case doesn't even deserve to be here. We feel very comfortable with our briefing. We feel very comfortable with our lawsuits. We have some of the world's cutting-edge testing technology, as Bob discussed, but we also believe what we have to be the state-of-the-art complaint, which is the document that is used to initiate a lawsuit. We go into more depth than any other law firm in the country when it relates to our complaints. And really we go so far as to, I would say it's free discovery for the defendants because we are giving testing results right there in the very first document. That's just not something that most complaints do. Uniquely, all of our complaints are rooted in Georgia law. They are state law claims that we bring on behalf of Georgians. There are different ways that you can bring a lawsuit. Obviously, the old saying, there's many different ways to skin a cat, right? But the way that we wanted to skin it was we wanted Georgia juries to determine the fate of Georgia property owners. And so we have very artfully pled our complaints in order to accommodate that. So the next step, the next phase, if we are successful in getting past the motion to dismiss phase, is called discovery. Rome, Georgia has been talked about many times tonight, but I think it's very, very important to recognize the role that Rome has uniquely played in PFAS litigation. Andy Davis is the city attorney for the city of Rome, and Rome got ahead of the curve when it came to PFAS litigation. Ahead of the curve. The same cannot be said when we give this speech in other parts of the state. But one of the documents that has been unearthed in PFAS litigation, not just in the Rome case, but across the country, is this one right here. And you'll see in the top left corner that PFAS was originally made at a 3M manufacturing facility in Decatur, Alabama, and was transported by rail car to Northwest Georgia. And you can follow this diagram all the way down to the very bottom left-hand corner where it ends up in people. This is a document that was made by scientists hired by 3M to conduct a study. This is coming directly from them. If this is what we could get on a public basis, was publicly available, imagine what we'll be able to unearth when we get into the formal process of discovery, right? So I encourage you to do research. Documents like this are available. Look at them. This was made in the 1990s. This is 30 years of knowledge of how dangerous something is. And it's taken us 30 years to get to this point, but we're here. This is included in our complaints as well. It's what we call a heat map, just kind of a simplistic term to describe things. But all of those red markers are carpet manufacturing facilities. And as you can see, the red is where our testing results are higher, right? But if you notice down here in Rome where there's 2 markers, we actually haven't done a lot of testing in this area. We've done some public testing of public waterways just because people have come up to us at town halls and said, hey, I want you to come and test the river outside of the hospital that I work at. I mean, these are real conversations that we've had, and so we've accommodated that. But we've not done any private landowner testing in this area, and we're just now beginning to do so. One thing that we've done all across the state of Georgia, and I'll be very brief, is that when we started PFAS Georgia, we meant that we wanted this to be a statewide campaign. Northwest Georgia is unique because of the industry, but PFAS is a Georgia problem, it's an American problem, and it's a worldwide problem. We are all going to have to deal with this at some point in our life. And so we have filed class action lawsuits on behalf of counties across Georgia, including Dougherty County, which is in Albany, is the county seat of Dougherty County in southwest Georgia. You can see several counties in northwest Georgia, the city of Blakely in southwest Georgia, the city of Griffin, city of Chatsworth. We have filed actions on behalf of these cities and counties for their landfills, their wastewater treatment facilities, and other things, so that it ultimately does not fall back on the taxpayer. In Ben's video that you saw him testifying at the legislature, counties, municipalities, states could be required to implement certain PFAS standards in the next few years to decades. If that's required today, many cities, counties, states could not comply. That would result in a bond issue in order to purchase the equipment to buy that you need to remediate PFAS. Take the Rome settlement, for example, roughly $250 million. That's an incredible, incredible amount. On a nationwide basis, the drinking water utilities for every single drinking water utility across the country settled with 3M for $12.5 billion. That includes cities, municipalities, counties, all across the country. Some with the tens of millions of people that are on that drinking water utility and get their drinking water supply from it. Now, City of Rome settled for $250 million, but the entire nation settled for $12.5 billion. Imagine what it would cost to remediate PFAS in water for a city like the size of Atlanta or Houston or Los Angeles or Chicago. It'd be a lot more than $250 million, I can assure you that. So like I said, we filed individual actions on behalf of landfills, but we're also very proud of our statewide class actions that are pending in southwest Georgia, in the middle district of Georgia, that we've also filed. So brings us to the simple question of who has a claim. Our starting criteria is that you have to own an acre or more of land, and you have to have a water source on your property of something different than just city water. Okay, that can be a streak, it can be a stream, not a streak, a stream, it can be a creek, it can be a pond, it can be a well, right? But we've had rivers run next to people's property. There has to be a water source other than just municipal water so that we can test it to see if you can potentially qualify. But we represent, like I said, over 1,100 individuals, business owners, farmers, I mean, we really have an incredible group of clients, and it's resulted in an incredible data set that our scientists are using to piece all of this together to really find out what happens next for Northwest Georgia. Like I said previously, all of our claims are rooted in Georgia law. That's something we are very, very proud of, and we believe we will ultimately prevail on these claims. As always, there is risk in litigation, but we believe that it should be decided by a jury of your peers and not by legislators in Atlanta who are attempting to remove all of the remedies that are available to you currently under Georgia law. Property damage claims are basic trespass. That's when it makes its way onto your property that's not supposed to be there. I akin this to when someone pulls up to your property with a dump truck full of sand. If they dumped sand on your property, you'd say, hey, you probably need to get that off my property, right? This is what's happened to your property in the form of PFAS, but you can't see it, you can't smell it, but it's there, and it's toxic. So the most important thing, if you get anything out of this tonight, is what Erin talked about and the power of the individual, and that you know when something just isn't quite right. We've heard that time and time again, but what we've learned over the course of the past 2 years is that your rights as Georgians, your rights as property owners, your rights as business owners, farmers, etc., is in a direct line of attack in Atlanta. And I would love nothing more to come back and give town hall after town hall to keep you apprised of updates as we continue to progress through litigation and let you know how this is going and the wins that we have, and there may be losses some along the way too. We're not naive enough to think we're going to win everything. But if lawmakers had it their way, a lot of your claims would be brought to a halt with the stroke of a pen. We've, in a bipartisan way, defeated these bills. Republicans, Democrats have uniquely come together to stop it. But there's no guarantees that we will be able to stop it. Not even if something is passed tomorrow. And I can assure you, we have received notice of a hearing time and time again the night before where we have to literally mobilize to Atlanta just to get there to try to stick up for our client base and also have our clients stick up for the people of Northwest Georgia and Georgia as a whole. But the most important thing you can do tonight is take out your phone and scan that QR code. Begin the process of just finding out the status of PFAS contamination on your property. It's a scary thought, but it's better to know what you are facing as a landowner, as a family, than to not be informed. Because PFAS is here. I've learned it. I've learned it the hard way, right? When I naively stood up in front of a crowd, and I can't remember the name of a restaurant, but you all know it, I'm sure. It's got airplanes on the outside. I walked in, and in the back room, I gave a speech to this crowd. I'm talking about statistics, and the guy raised his hand. He said, "That's me," right? This is real. You may be in this room tonight. Almost every single person in this room tonight has some level of PFAS in their blood. So what are we all going to do about it? That's what's next. And I hope all of you will join us in this fight to keep our land clean, to keep our air clean, to keep our water clean, like the way God intended. Thank you all so much. We appreciate it. We're going to stick around and answer questions, and Erin Brockovich will be here to take pictures with you all.